our nervous system. You'll also hear me discuss a little bit of the gunas, which are kind of the moving states. There's three moving states of nature within yogic theory. And the idea is that we want these things balanced, just like we want our nervous system balanced. So we'll be speaking about those together today. If you see me looking off to my tablet, it's because I'm checking the chat. If you have any questions, any issues throughout, feel free to type in there. I'll offer variations, options. If you see me over there checking my notes, it's because I have ADHD and sometimes things fall out of my brain and I need to remind myself what I'm doing. So just so you know what's going on. Today, we are going to start with movement and then come down into our restorative posture. So we have a gentle flow. Now, you can practice seated or standing. So I'm going to go ahead and help any folks who are seated get kind of set up for our grounding. And then for our folks who will be standing on the mat, you can join me in a moment. So if you don't have your props, for our restorative portion, we'll be using a bolster or a couple pillows or a bunch of blankets, two blankets, and maybe blocks that might be helpful for us. If we don't have blocks, we can have extra pillows or books, anything that we can use for a little extra support. For our standing portion, if we like, and we will be standing, we can use our blocks, or of course, comfortable seat. If we're going to be practicing our restorative section seated, you might want a second chair to use for support for folds or to lift your legs up onto. Or if you don't have a chair, you can practice next to a desk or table, and that'll give you the support for the upper body. So when we're ready, if we're seated, we're going to find a comfortable position. I like to have the legs a little bit further apart so that I have space for my belly. If you're more comfortable with the legs together, you can do that. We just want to make sure that we can maybe find a nice long spine if that is helpful for us. If we have any sort of balance issues, we can also scoot back against the wall and use the back for support. So glad you're here, Angie. Okay, so I'm going to set that there. If we are standing, we'll find whatever standing position is comfortable for us. So I like to be about hips width apart, toes facing forward. That's me. I kind of naturally come into Tadasana. So maybe shifting the weight from side to start, just so we can find a nice comfortable position. And then maybe kind of lengthening through the top of the head. I like my hands to the side, but if you want them on the body or in pockets, you can do that too. We'll take a moment to notice the space around us, whether we're seated or standing. We can also be seated on the mat if that's more comfortable. If we like, we might notice the sounds in our space. I'm teaching from a city, so you might occasionally hear sirens or yelling through your speakers, but notice what's in your space as well. If we like, we might gently close the eyes or find a soft gaze if we're not comfortable closing our eyes. We may take a few moments to notice the breath as it is in this moment. Noticing our inhale and our exhale. If we like, on our next inhale, we might release with a sigh or vocalization. Letting go of the day. And we might do this again if we like, maybe lengthening or extending the exhale, but only if that feels good for us. And maybe on our next exhale, letting ourselves kind of rest down through the chair, down through the mat, all the way down into the earth itself. Letting ourselves be heavy, supported by the earth. And then we'll find our natural breath, whatever that looks like for us. We might take a moment to notice the state of the body. We might first notice any sensations we feel in the body, if we feel a need to move, or if we feel more comfortable being still. We might notice if we have any big emotions or feelings today. We might notice if we have any racing thoughts, or maybe if our thoughts are coming a bit slower today, or if they feel a bit foggy or exceptionally clear. And we'll notice how all these things come together for an overall sense of energy, where we are in this moment. If we're feeling a bit foggy, a bit like we're kind of moving through a wet blanket, if we feel heavy in not a supportive way, if we feel slower than usual, this might be the energy of tamas, one of the gunas I mentioned earlier. If we feel a bit frantic, energetic, in a kind of like skin tingly way, if we feel like we're having a hard time slowing our thoughts, this might be the energy of rajas or rajastic energy. And if we're feeling calm, clear headed, relaxed, content, this might be sattva at work or sattvic energy. In moments in this state, like all the states, can be fleeting. It's not something that we want to grasp or hold on to, but it is something that we might let ourselves settle into, might let ourselves sit with. So, noticing where we're starting, we'll keep that in mind as we move through our practice today. And we might start with a little bit of gentle movement or rocking. We can do this with our eyes closed, or we can open our eyes if that's more comfortable, but maybe gently rocking from side to side, from foot to foot, or hip to hip if we're seated. We might rock forward and back if we're seated. That might be more comfortable. Just kind of noticing how the movement feels in the body. And this might feel good, especially if maybe we're experiencing that, um, experiencing tamas. If we're feeling a little bit more frenetic, we might feel like we need an outlet for our movement. And we might start to maybe shake the arms or add a little bounce, maybe bouncing the shoulders or bouncing on the balls of the feet. I usually shake my hands. This can be a nice outlet for that kind of rajastic energy, or sometimes it's a helpful way to wake us up out of tamas. Whatever works, whatever feels good. You can stay with the first, you can move into the second. We might kind of slowly start to settle, maybe releasing the arms down, maybe swinging from side to side. Any sort of organic movement that feels good. No judgment. You're not on camera. You can do whatever you want. And then when we're ready, making our way back to stillness. And maybe noticing how we're feeling now versus when we started. And we're not looking for any change. We're just noticing differences, noticing how certain things feel in our body. There's no judgment, there's no good, there's no bad, there's just is. And as someone with ADHD, stillness can sometimes feel hard too. And that's okay. If you want to bring a little bit of that sway back, you can. Beautiful. From here, we're going to move into our first bit of flowing movement. So, if we are standing, we can stay in this position or bring the feet together, whatever feels comfortable. Same with as we're seated, we'll just follow the cues as we go. So, we're going to start with some arm circles, maybe bringing the arms together and then bringing them up. So, making nice, big, wide circles with the arms. Beautiful. And we can stay here if this feels good. We might link breath. So maybe on the next inhale, reaching the arms up, exhaling down. Beautiful. We might add in the neck, gazing up on the inhale, down on the exhale. Finally, we have the opportunity for a bit more movement, maybe adding a fold or a squat. So maybe on the next exhale, coming down, folding or squatting, inhaling up, exhaling down. We're going to do 4 more of these in whatever way feels best for you. Beautiful. And then on the next exhale, we'll release the arms down and take any movement that feels good here. Beautiful. Next, we're going to move into some calf raises or heel raises. So we can do these standing or seated. Turn to the side so we can see. We'll lift up onto the balls of the foot, raising the heel. We can do one leg at a time or both legs at a time. We can also do it seated. Again, one leg at a time or both. So we'll do about 6 more of these in whatever way feels good. And 6. And then we'll take a moment here. Next, we're going to move into, excuse me, some sun salutations, some half sun salutations. If you have a preferred variation of sun salutation or Surya Namaskar, please feel free to come into whatever variation works for you right now. We're going to do 8 rounds. The first one, we're going to go a little bit slower so everyone can find it in their body. If we're seated, we're going to be following the same cues for the upper body, but we're just going to make sure we find a lower position that's comfortable for us. So again, feet can be together or they can be apart. You know me, I like to go apart because we are going to fold, so I want to make sure I have space for my belly. If we're seated, we can use blocks in front of us for our folds. For our fold, half fold, we can have our hands on our legs. Okay, everything else, we're going to follow the same directions, arms up. One thing to note, if you do have any back issues, when raising the arms, try to raise them from the sides up rather than going forward. When we go forward, we put a bit more strain on the low back. So just something to keep in mind. If we're standing, we'll find our Tadasana. So I have my blocks at the front of the mat if we are going to use blocks, or you can have a chair here, and instead of placing your hands on the floor or the blocks, just place it on the base of the chair. So for our Tadasana, our feet can be hips width apart or even wider, or they can be really close together, whatever works in your body. We're going to ground down through the soles of the feet. We might take a couple rocks to evenly distribute the weight. We'll see if we can find a nice long spine through the top of the head. We might bring the hands out to the sides. And we have our Tadasana. We do want to make sure that we're engaging these core muscles so it feels like kind of like right before you cough, just to help guard the low back. And for our first asana in our Surya Namaskar, we have Tadasana. Our second asana, if we like to link breath, inhaling up into upward salute. So palms are facing each other, shoulders are pulled away from the ears. On our exhale, we'll fold forward at the hips. We can bring our hands down to the sides or forward down, whichever works best. And we're going to bring our hands to our blocks, to the floor, to our legs, to our chair for our forward fold. If we like, we can intend the crown of the head to the ground or anywhere in between. We'll come into our half fold. So finding length from the spine. We can put our hands on our thighs. We can put our hands on our blocks, whatever's comfortable. We can look up or down. And then we're going to exhale back down into our forward fold. We'll bring a bend to the knees. Reach the arms back up into our upward salute. And then we can exhale, hands together through heart center and back to our starting position. So now that we've found all the postures in our body, we'll go 7 more times, going at whatever speed works for us. We don't all have to finish at the same time. So when we're ready, inhaling up. Exhaling into our fold, if that feels good. Inhale, half fold. Exhale, fold. We might bend the knees. Inhale, the arms up. Exhale, hands together. And back to Tadasana. Inhale, reaching the arms up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half fold. Exhale, fold. Bending the knees, reaching up. Hands through heart center and to the sides. Beautiful. Inhale up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half fold. Exhale, fold. Grounding through the feet, bending the knees, reaching up. Hands through heart center and to the sides. Beautiful. Inhaling up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half fold. Exhale, fold. Bending the knees, reaching up. Hands to heart center and to the sides. Inhale up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half fold. Exhale, fold. Bending the knees, reaching up. Hands to your heart center and to the sides. Inhale up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half fold. Exhale, fold. Bending the knees, reaching up. Hands to your heart center and to the sides. Beautiful. 2 more. Inhale up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half. Exhale, release. Bending the knees, reaching. Hands to your heart center and to the side. Last one. Inhale up. Exhale, fold. Inhale, half fold. Exhale, fold. Bending the knees, reaching up. Hands to your heart center and to the sides. Let's stay here for a moment, letting the breath regulate. Beautiful. Take a moment, shake out. And if we like, we can grab a drink. From here, we're going to move into our pranayama or breath work, and then we'll move into our restorative postures. So, while everyone gets situated, we'll be practicing pranayama seated. So, if we're on our chair, we want to make sure that we are in a comfortable position for us. So, sometimes that's at the edge of the chair, sometimes that's pushed back with this back support, whatever feels more comfortable. We just want to make sure that we have space to breathe. So, again, if you have a larger belly like me, legs apart might be helpful so we're not pushing into the diaphragm. Excuse me. But if you're more comfortable with the support from the back, feel free. Or if you do want that support and the space, grab a bolster or a pillow. You can slide that right behind you so you have both. If we are seated on the mat or in a bed, we can be seated anywhere that's comfortable. We can have the legs crossed. We can have them in Baddha Konasana or butterfly, feet together, knees apart. We can have the legs stretched out in front of us. Sometimes it's helpful to sit on a bolster or a couple pillows so that we have the pelvis raised. Sometimes that can help with feelings of congestion around the belly or legs and give us a little bit more space in the hips. So anything that feels good here. I'm going to take a quick sip here. Beautiful. Oops, let me just move this over here. So we'd be practicing what's often called humming knee breath or Bhramari. And we'll have the option to practice with Shanmukti Mudra as well. So first, we'll talk a little bit about the breath. So for this breath, we're inhaling generally through the nose and exhaling with a hum. So the mouth is closed, but the lips can be parted slightly. I'll give an example of what it sounds like. Continuing the breath out until it naturally runs out, and then inhaling again and beginning again. So if we like, we can practice in that way alone. Traditionally, we would take either the fingers and gently hold the cartilage into the ear a bit, just until you start to hear that the hearing is kind of closed in. We don't want to press in all the way, just softly. That's another way that we can practice. We would inhale. We might notice a buzzing, a vibration through the nose, the face, particularly when we hold the ears closed. Another option is Shanmukti Mudra. And for that, we're doing the same thing with the ears, except we're using our thumbs. And we gently place the fingers resting over the eyes, just under the eye, above the lip, and pinkies below the lip, with the fingers gently pressing in. So as we practice this, you won't really be able to hear me once you start because of the vibrations. So I'm going to say everything up front and then we'll begin. As we exhale, again, we're going to exhale until the air comes out. We're going to try to keep it as even as possible, but bodies do what bodies do. So don't worry about that too much. Inhaling through the nose, if we can. If we're congested, we might inhale through the mouth, but we'll try to also breathe in through the nose just to help clear the congestion. This breath also, just on the side, is helpful for clearing congestion. And then letting that run out and then cycling. We're going to do 4 of these breaths in this manner. If after the first couple of breaths, the buzzing feels a little too intense, feel free to remove the hands, place the hands on the lap. Because we all have different kind of lengths of breath, When you finish on your last exhale, you can go ahead as you hum, release. You can lower the hands and then just find your natural breath and do that until we're all together again. Okay. So we'll start again with hand position of choice. We'll inhale and release. Beautiful. And when we're together, we'll all make our way into our first supported restorative posture. So, if we have been seating and we'd like to be in the bed right now, go ahead, make your way to the bed. If you've been sitting and you'd like to be on the floor, or if you've been standing and you'd like to be on the floor, go ahead and make your way to the floor. And if we're practicing seated and maybe we haven't had our other props around us, we can go ahead and gather those now, as well as a drink and anything you would like for your final resting position. Okay. So for our first position, we will be coming into a supported forward fold. So I'm going to demo seated and then I'll demo on the mat. So if we're in a chair and we have another chair in front of us, if we like, we can put a couple blankets or a bolster, directly down onto the chair in front of us. Hinge forward and rest that way. If we like, we can also use our bolster or pillows kind of propped against the chair, and then we can fold forward and rest that way. Or if we have blocks handy, we can stack these until they're at whatever we feel like is the height that we want to be at. And then slowly hinge forward. I like to leave my legs as far apart as comfortable so I get that nice hip stretch. And we want to remember that we're folding from the hip joint, not the waist. So hinging forward, resting. We want to make sure that our head feels supported in this version. So whatever that looks like for you. And I'm going to demo that on the mat as well. So I'm going to move my chair out of the way here. So similar options here. We're going to come out into a nice long stretch, whether we're seated on the mat or in our bed. We can stack up pillows and blankets to whatever height we need. If we have a bolster, we can have it upright against the floor, kind of moving it front or back, depending on what we need. We might wrap the arms around it for support. We can do the same thing, stacking our blocks. Nice thing about the blocks is we have the option to kind of position it to whatever height we need. And I like to throw a blanket on top for a little bit of softness, or you can wrap the blanket around the shoulders, kind of cape-like to help keep yourself warm, or a blanket on the legs, whatever you need to be comfortable. So taking a moment, grounding through the sit bones, backs of the legs, hinging at the hip, folding forward, resting our head, And we'll take a few moments in this position, letting the breath come to us in whatever way feels comfortable. We also might notice any areas of the body that feel particularly tight or tender and make any adjustments we need to support those areas. Maybe putting a blanket under the knees if we notice we're locking our knees. Maybe smoothing out fabric if it's causing a little bump beneath us. Anything we need. And then once we've done all of those things, we might allow ourselves a moment to just be as we are. And we'll be here for the next 3 minutes or so. When we're ready, we'll slowly return to the breath, noticing the inhale and exhale. We can gently press the hands against the ground or props in front of us, slowly making our way up to seated. Beautiful. For our next asana, we'll be moving into a supine twist. And we have quite a few options. So I'll go ahead and get people on the mat set up first. And then I'll set up folks in our chairs. So if you are comfortable being reclined completely against the mat, we can do that now. Laying down on our backs, we might want to have our bolster off to the right side to start. But if you do the left side, that's okay because we're going to do both sides. But whatever side you want to start on, have a bolster or maybe a couple blankets or blocks on that side so that we can use them if we need them. If we like, we can also take one of our blankets, fold it into this little square, and place the fold along the side closest to us to use as a pillow. If we use this, we'll want it just under the head and neck with the shoulders against the mat. If you are not comfortable laying completely reclined, you can create this ramp using blocks in an L shape, or you can stack a couple pillows up from going across the mat, and then a couple more pillows going lengthwise, or we can use our bolster here to create this ramp. So whichever feels better. If we're using the ramp, we'll put our bum against the base of the ramp, and we're still going to want our bolster or block off to the side if we have extras or pillows. We can have a blanket over us as well. Can do the eye pillow. Can make yourself as comfy as you like. But once we're reclined, either against the mat or against our ramp, we'll place the soles of the feet on the ground, raising the knees, and then slowly lower the knees towards the right, trying to keep our back against the support. The knees can be stacked or they can be staggered. And this might be when we use our block or our bolster, placing it under the legs or knees on the right side so that they're at a height that feels comfortable for us. Beautiful. And once we find the variation of that works for us, we'll stay there. Now, if we are in the chair, it's going to look a little different for us. And it might look different depending on what chair we have available to us. So if we have a chair without arms, or if we're sitting on a bench, we might turn to the side and then lean, and we can use a pillow behind us if we have a gap. Opening the heart space so that we're leaning against the back of the chair. We also might grab a pillow, place it behind the head, and our hand can go out towards the other side of the chair, and we can rest this way. If we have arms on our chairs, we might bring one hand behind us at the bum, one hand against the inner line of the leg or on the chair arm, and open up towards the right side. And again, we can have a pillow behind the head, and we can kind of lean back against the chair. You know, once we're in the position, we can slide the hand out from behind the bum. And we can rest this way or with our arm on our leg, anything that works here. If we like, we can also put the legs on the seat in front of us if that's more comfortable. If these options aren't working for anyone, please type in the chat and we'll work through something that does. But once you've found that position, we'll slowly release back. Do our best on our exhale to notice any areas that maybe feel tight and see if we can kind of consciously release on the exhale. I use the visualization sometimes that I find helpful. I imagine while I inhale, I'm sending all of this air to that tight space, and I can feel the muscle fibers kind of falling apart as it fills with air. And then on the exhale, draining that air along with all the tension, all the stress, until we see just smooth muscle fiber. And we'll be on this side for about 3 minutes. When we're ready, we might return to the breath. If we're reclined, we might slowly begin to bring our legs back through center. And if you need like to take a moment to stretch the legs out, feel free. We might move any props that we were using onto the opposite side of the mat. So from the right to the left side. And then when we're ready, we might again raise the knees and then slowly rest the knees against the left side of the mat on our bolster or support, wherever we need to be. Beautiful. If we're seated, We can return. So maybe opening the chest, coming back towards facing the same direction as the legs. And then we can switch to the opposite side of the chair. We can move our props anywhere we need. And then slowly come into the twist on the opposite side. So either opening the heart space up towards the left this time or towards the right this time, depending on what side we were on last. Or twisting and opening up in the opposite direction. And we'll be here for about 3 more minutes. And when we're ready, we'll slowly come back to the breath, noticing our inhale and exhale. We can bring the body, the legs back towards center if we're reclined, the torso if we are seated. Might take a moment to stretch out, take any movement that feels good here. And we'll set up for our final resting position. If we are on the mat or in the bed, I would like to offer a forward-facing Shavasana or belly lying Shavasana. But if that doesn't feel comfortable or you have your own preferred position, please feel free to enter that now. If we are seated, we might take our roll, or if we're practicing, if we're going to practice our belly line, we'll take a blanket and roll it into a long sausage. If we're seated, we might use this around the neck for support as we settle back into our chair. If we have a bolster or pillow, we might also set this down for a moment. Enjoy holding the bolster, wrapping our arms around it. Or we can rest our feet on a bolster if that's more comfortable. If we are practicing our stomach lying Shavasana, I'm going to start by laying one bolster along the length of the mat. I'm going to take my rolled blanket. This will go down near where my feet will be because I want that to support the ankles. And this might be enough here, or we might choose to take a pillow and lie it at the bottom, kind of like an upside down T going across the mat, or a blanket across the mat. We might also like a blanket wrapped around us. So maybe putting it on like a cape before we get into position so it's easier to navigate. And then to come into our stomach lying Shavasana, we'll have the support, move this out of the way here, of the bolster beneath us. Sometimes we might want to grab an extra pillow or blanket for under the head. If we have that other pillow under the support of the pelvis, we'll just adjust until we feel like it's in the right position. We can wrap our arms around the bolster or blankets, or we can place the hand under the head. And again, our ankles are going over our rolled blanket at the base. So if that feels comfortable, we can stay there. If we have a blanket around us like a cape, we might spread it out. But from wherever we are, in whatever position we've chosen, we might take a few deep breaths. Maybe in through the nose, out through the mouth, if that's helpful. We just want to make sure that whatever position we're in, that we don't really have to hold ourselves up into it. So if there are any adjustments we need to make, we can go ahead and make those. Kind of let ourselves be held. And when we're ready, again, we might take a deep, slow breath in through the nose if that feels good. And then maybe sigh it out. And we can do that again. No need to deepen or lengthen the breath unless it feels good. And then we'll find our natural breath. Whatever that is, allowing it to be enough. We might begin to notice what it feels like inside the body. Not what we think we should feel, not what we want to feel, but noticing what's actually there. Is there a sense of heaviness, a foggy kind of stillness? You might be in a tamastic state, one that calls for gentleness, for light, for the reminder that movement is possible but not required right now. Is there restlessness, a buzz under the skin, a racing mind? You might be in a rajastic state, one that's full of fire, urgency, need for movement. Can we meet it with breath instead of judgment? Noticing without attachment. Is there a feeling of quiet? A sense of space? Sometimes even a single moment when things feel okay. That might be sattva, clarity, balance, ease. Not something we grasp at, not as a goal, but as a visitor, enjoying it as it passes through. None of these are better or worse. These energies are part of the nature of the universe, part of your nervous system. part of your body's wisdom. What's true in this moment might change in the next. And that's okay. We might allow ourselves to sink into the props, into the support of the chair, the bed, the mat. Allow ourselves to notice that feeling of being supported, of being held. And we might offer to ourselves, either silently or in a whisper, where I am is not wrong. My body is doing its best to protect me. I don't have to be calm to be worthy of care. I'm allowed to take up space, even here, even now. We might allow ourselves to breathe into that, to let it land in the mind, in the body. And we'll spend the next few minutes in this space, allowing it to do just that. Where I am is not wrong. My body is doing its best to protect me. I don't have to be calm to be worthy of care, and I am allowed to take up space. When you're ready to return, you can do so slowly with the same gentleness you offered your breath, the same care you offer to your nervous system. With the knowledge that your resting body is not a problem to fix, it's a truth to honor. Excuse me. If we like, we can start to bring movement into the body. But if we're comfortable where we are, we can feel free to stay there. We might bring a little bit of movement into the fingers and toes, the head and neck. We might take a nice long stretch or do anything that makes us feel a bit more comfortable in this moment. If we like, maybe gently rolling onto the left or right side. And then maybe slowly making our way up to seated. From wherever we are, if we like, we can bring the hands to heart center or place them anywhere against the body that feels good. We'll take 3 breaths together in a way that feels comfortable. And take a moment to thank ourselves for making space for a bit of movement and rest tonight. And thank you so much for sharing your practice with me. It honestly means so much to me.